Today I want to continue my Copenhagen printing series made with a Hasselblad camera on a Portra 400 at night in Copenhagen in November 2021. So let's start with the chemistry. As always, I start with the warm water, just put it in a bucket and insert my Cinestill circulator and set it up for temperature of 36 degrees to have perfectly 35 degrees inside my bottles. So let's dress up and unpack all the small stuff in my darkroom. Starting with the enlarger and putting all the settings in the middle position, because last time I forget to do it. So let's remove the filter and open up the aperture, and let's bring up the film strip from my storage. For today I have two different shots, and I'm not sure about the sharpness because one of them actually made with a handheld. But anyway, because I don't have a scans for this particular print, I at least want to see the print itself and if it's worth to printing or make a lot of corrections. So let's start with the first one. So this is the first picture loaded inside the frame. And because I have only 6x6 frame, we can only use the maximum size of negative 6x6. I'm putting 10 seconds on the timer and turn on the pilot light, remove the filters and trying to align the negative in the frame and on the easel. With the focus finder, let's check if we have a sharpness on the picture and if we have too much motion blur. So sharpness looks fine, but I'm actually curious about this motion blur because it looks like a double shot. So to make a test print, let's start with the color calibrator for initial point. Turn on the diffusion filter and close down aperture to f11. Under diffuse light, I move the sensitive hat back and forward to find the maximum intensity. And when I have a maximum on the cyan channel, I adjust parameter on the hat to put the needle in the central position. As a next step, I turn on the second channel, which is magenta, and repeat the procedure with turning on the knobs to match required intensity. And when everything is ready under the safe light, I made the first test exposure. Before first print, I actually checking the temperature in the bottle to be sure it's exactly 35 degrees and I have no deviations. So the procedure for array 4 chemistry is pretty simple. So you need to run color developer for 45 seconds, and after the color developer you need to run bleach fix for 45 seconds. And because all the chemicals is reusable up to 40-50 times, I put them back in the bottles. So let's check out our first test print after a quick wash. Even on a wet print I can see a lot of motion blur and too much cyan channel. So I will not spend a lot of time for this print, so let's dry up the drum and make a small corrections on the print. So I will run for corrections on the cyan channel for 10 points, and I will be just hoping if it's good enough, and I will open aperture half stop to remove this overexposure in the central point of the print. So I'm applying the corrections on the photo head and making final exposure on the paper. I usually reuse my gloves multiple times up to the point they actually break. For me it's more important for dryness of the hand, and this is exposure number 25 and run number 25. So let's rotate for 45 seconds with the color developer, put it back in the bottle and back to circulator to reheating, and repeat the same operation with the bleach fix. And after everything is done, we can check my final print. So let's quickly dry it on the wall and check my final result. So the first thing, it's too much motion blur in this picture, and for some reason composition looks strange. I'm not get used to making long exposures from the Hasselblad, and the blurry people and exposure turn down my composition a bit. And I also have this fogging on the paper again. So it looks really strange, but I will try to fix it on the next print. I will check for possible light leaks and put my safe light somewhere far away. Next picture made with a tripod and the cable release, so I will directly proceed with the color calibration and not check the sharpness. So let's turn on the diffuse light, find the optimal maximum point, and adjust intensity on all of the channels, cyan, magenta and yellow. And when the operation is complete, I usually recheck each channel if it's still in the middle. And when the procedure is over, I will remove the photo head from the table and continue with the test printing. For this print I start with a bigger size of the test print, because probably I will need more corrections with the color, and it's tricky shot. Even with the scanning, it's not so easy to get the colors right. And after a quick run of the standard development procedure with the color developer and the bleach fix, I can open the drum and check my result of the test print. Because it's not washing in the drum, I have slightly yellow tint from the bleach fix. So let's quickly rinse it under running water. But I already can see I have a lot of problems with the cyan channel, and picture looks a little bit overexposed. So let's quickly dry it on the wall and apply the squeegee on top. And let's check the quality of the initial test print. As I said before, we need to go with a reduction of the cyan channel, because it looks a little bit cyanish green for me, and I'm not sure if I need to bring magenta up to compensate to get this brick to middle gray area. So let's write down all the parameters what I have of this test print on top of the test print and put it inside my lab book. I'm using this white tape, and it's much easier to remove it from the paper or from the print, so literally it's no harm to the emulsion on the print. And this is a really good strategy if you wanna untape your test prints and do something else with them. But for now, let's check with the test printer our cyan channel. So I will increase the cyan filter with a step of 5 and make 6 different exposures with the 10 seconds and changing only one parameter. Usually it's much better to start with the exposure, but exposure it's a strange parameter here because I have too much contrast, and I'm not sure if I want to decide to go with a more bright picture or more moody dark picture. And for me at the moment it's a good point to start to just removing the obvious errors, which is cyan tint on the picture. Maybe it will be completely wrong, but at least at the starting point it's a good sign if you're moving in the proper direction or it's completely wrong. And when the paper is no longer sensitive to the light, we can open the tank and inspect our test print. Because it's 6 different pieces of the same print, we can clean up the buckets, quickly rinse it under the water, and inspect all of our 6 different steps. For me, good indicator of the test print, it's actually rendition from the cyanish tint to completely reddish kind of a orangish tint on the opposite side. Because in this case you can easily find the middle position what you want to use in the test print and continue with the next steps. So I will write down all the parameters close to the windows with the small prints and tape it down also in my print book. And when I finish with my all prints, I will see the direct logic how I make corrections and if my steps was correct or completely wrong. So let's apply yellow correction, and as a next step I want to check the exposure here on the door. The picture itself should be much darker, so I will run the test exposure with the steps of aperture with the half stop clicks. In my experience it's actually too much difference in exposure, but for this print I unfortunately don't know completely what is our desirable range. Because I'm using 10 seconds interval, it's much better to run with a 5 seconds difference interval, and you will get much more precise exposure range for the whole spectrum of exposures. So let's open up the tank and check if my test print was successful. Sometimes you can make errors, for example with the paper alignment in the test printer or with the wrong side of the paper. Things happens in the darkroom, but this test print looks okay. So we at least checked the mark with the cyan channel and I have a full exposure range. So after quick drying and applying the squeegee on the print and writing down all the parameters for exposures, I can select the exposure what I like more for this print. On the left side I have initial exposure, in the middle is one stopped up, and I think fully open aperture for 5.6 it's too much. So I will set up something in the middle like f8 and put this test strip back in my lab book. And as a next correction I will make a correction for the yellow and try to find the ideal point to keep the print a little bit warm and in the same time remove too much yellow tint. Sometimes it's not easy to keep the balance on the whole picture because of the mixed lighting and because I make a photograph itself without any correction filters on my lens, And the Portra 400 is actually daylight balance film. On a scanner it's not so important because you have too much flexibility and you can change colors whatever you want. But if you work without the digital intermediate, it's much harder to get the balance on all of the parts of the picture. So let's quickly rinse our test print and dry it on the wall, apply the squeegee and check what is optimal result with the test. On this printing series you can clearly see the initial print is actually too yellow. Because I made the steps with the 5, I really like the 75 and 80. And probably print will be a little bit too cold, I'm not sure, so let's go with a bigger print, locking up aperture on f8 and run the final development procedure. Maybe for someone will be useful this small trick with the gloves, so you just need to pop the air inside, rotate them a few times to close it up and pop it up, and you can easily put it on the hands. As I explained in the previous videos, the development starts only when you rotate the drum horizontally, because inside the drum you have a cup and it's only spilling the chemicals on the paper when you rotate it 90 degrees. My chemicals looks actually close to the end because I can see in the color developer the indicator became a little bit reddish. So probably in future I will switch up to the regenerator of chemistry or replenish chemistry somehow. But for now, let's check my final print, and it actually looks really good. For the dark prints, it's a little bit bluish when it's wet, so I'm kind of glad it looks like this now. And when you dry it on the wall, it's removing all the bluish tint from the paper and print becomes more neutral and more dense. This print actually connecting a little bit with the memory, so it was a late evening in Copenhagen, it was a bit cold. Christmas market's already closing, and after long walks around the city, this is only one warm coffee place and the free Wi-Fi, and probably this girl on the bench taking advantage of the Wi-Fi. I really like the composition of the lower down shot, because it was on a micro tripod setting up on the floor. I have more or less straight lines on the building, and my corrections solve a lot of problems with this wall. It definitely looks like evening and it's not really this cyanish tint. It's not perfectly balanced, but taking into account this is a really bad lighting situation, I'm really glad with the results what I have here. Initial picture was underexposed, or it means it was like not enough light. And if we check the all correction steps what I make, the first step is removing the cyan from the bricks here. And the second step is actually making exposure of f8. And the final step, remove a little bit of yellow. And it means if I have these two channels together, I just need to change the all magenta channel. So next time I can take this example as my advantage, and if I see the same tint on a picture, maybe I just need to change only one channel. So that's it for today, and thank you for watching.